one of the big political choices Starmer has made, or he's confirmed based on a few leaks, is that they're going to ban smoking outdoors. Now, that does, again, this is posed as something technocratic. It's something we have to do for the health of the nation. But really, it betrays their politics, right? I mean, Starmer is miserable. He is authoritarian. He is Puritan, and all of those things.
You're quite. I mean, who knows how this is going to work? I mean, this comes off the back of the Tories' failed attempt to ban smoking generationally. Remember, one of their last policies was to phase out smoking by making it illegal for people before this date to buy cigarettes, people after that date to buy cigarettes, and that turned out to be a complete mess. This looks at least as though it resembles the smoking ban of the past. They're just moving it outdoors. But again, the problem is how do you stop someone smoking outside? Do you seriously walk up and give them a fine, give them a ticket or whatever? But you're right. I mean, this is an impulsive move to do something about public health, which just involves taking away someone's freedom. And when governments want to do something about a perceived problem like public health, banning is always the easiest thing to do. Just extend a ban, make something more illegal, and it's thought that will solve the problem. I mean, I do think that it's incredibly authoritarian, and especially the way, again, that these sort of things become normalized. We remember the discussions around the indoor smoking ban.
Yeah.
And people, you know, we a lot of people say, well, we look back at that now and what a sensible choice we all made. Wasn't that a wonderful thing to do? But it did lead to significant closures of venues up and down the country. It led to people losing their jobs. It led to a very significant change in our culture. And, you know, what's being proposed now would mean the closure of shisha bars, who would no longer be able to have shisha outside. It would mean the infrastructure that was built up around COVID, you know, people building things outside so people could be outside would now be redundant.
Yeah.
It's huge economic cost, and it's another state, and it's another move which shows complete indifference to business owners who have attempted to go along with the mad rules that have been up and down since COVID. It's just another two fingers to them.
Yeah. I mean, do you remember when Blair wanted to create a European-style cafe culture? Those were the days of...
Finally, it's happened.
Yeah. I don't normally look back fondly on the New Labour years as, you know, bastions of liberty, but there you go.
It's worth remembering as well that as part... I believe this is going to be part of their kind of revived tobacco and vapes bill, which was supposed to be Rishi Sunak's legacy. And then because the election he himself calls and ends up nixing his supposed legacy policy and handing it to the Labour Party. But I believe the generational ban is almost certainly also going to be a part of that. They're going to revive that. That's one thing to watch out for, I think, but because that plan to, you know, raise the smoking age by 1 year every year until no one can smoke, it's so demented in terms of how do you possibly police that I think the next move will just be to say we just need to ban it for everyone. Yeah. But this is also a reminder that at least part of the deal when it was first raised by the Tories was existing smokers are going to kind of be left alone, but this is a sign that that's definitely not going to be the case. And there's just for years, the sort of anti-smoking lobby drape themselves in a lot of very disingenuous arguments. This is entirely about secondhand smoke, for instance, which didn't even make sense with the original smoking ban, because they also banned it on like open air train platforms and wouldn't allow workmen to smoke in their own transit vans, even if they're alone. Like, it was obviously towards just paternalism. But again, the health arguments, what possible risk are you to someone to be within a few feet of them in the outdoors in a beer garden? It's not even negligible, it's non-existent. And yet they're still making these cases. But increasingly, this is clearly just about what these policies are always about, which is just pushing people around and imposing the tastes of the most miserable people in society on everyone else. Yeah. Like this idea that everyone just wants to live as long and as healthy a life as possible, and that you're absolutely mad if you would possibly prioritize pleasure to a certain degree. It just doesn't compute with the people who are setting these policies, unfortunately. And it's a sign of things to come. I mean, the fact that we're open, it's just a matter of course that we're going to usher in the total prohibition of cigarettes, despite prohibition being such a dreadful policy historically, and that's just common sense, apparently.
And there'll be no pushback. Mad. There'll be no pushback even from the Conservatives. Let's face it. You know, it feels like as soon as if they announce it, it's a done deal, pretty much. Unfortunately.
And I do think just listening to the discussion today, so much of it is about a general disgust with people's life choices. So you hear people saying, well, I don't want to sit in a pub garden when someone's smoking next to me. It's going to ruin my lunch. And you sort of think, well, you're living in a democracy and in a country where we have freedom to do. And I just think so much of this is about people's expression of distaste with smoking and with disgust at smoking and people's life choices. And, that's not what the law is for. It's not for sending messages to people about how disgusting they are.
It is just, aside from anything else, the health arguments being nonsense, the economic arguments being nonsense. These arguments about the NHS as well are complete. Like the idea that the biggest drain on the NHS is people who die earlier is absurd. Like there's plenty of evidence to show that actually it's non-smokers who tend to cost the state more over time for kind of obvious reasons. But it's also just how miserable it is, and the kind of culture that we're losing by letting these things just move through. Like just a country of genuine sort of live and let live, of not being so health obsessed, of not being so myopically focused as a government on policing the minutiae of people's lives, and actually maybe try and take on some of the bigger problems that confront us on the political level, on the cultural level, everything. It just shows how kind of rotten and intolerant things have become so quickly.